Hey, welcome everybody to the very new Manx As The Hills podcast. This is an introduction podcast into future podcasts that we plan to bring on this channel. So welcome everybody. In this short introductory podcast, we're going to touch on a few things, and we're going to look into why I've decided to start this podcast journey, who I am, where I've come from, and what the Manx As The Hills podcast plans to bring to you guys, whether you're online or located where I am. I've decided to stow upon this journey to bring to you an insight into not only my life, but the lives of others around me that have a very, very unique story to share to the world. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a second. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Kriss Parker. I am the host and producer of the Manx As The Hills podcast. And I'm originally from a very small country located in the middle of the Irish Sea called the Isle of Man. Now, the Isle of Man, if you don't know where that is a very small country. Yes, it is a country. There might be a few debates about that one with certain people. But we are famous for several things, mainly for the TT races, the Tourist Trophy motorbike races. If anybody quickly Googles that, you'll find that it's an extreme sport that the Isle of Man is very famous for. We're also very famous for, our large horses that pull trams. Yes, we still have trams in the Isle of Man. We have, I think it's still the world's largest working water wheel, and our cats. And it's funny to say cats because our cats don't have any tails, or a true Manx cat. A Manx is what we call ourselves if you're born in the Isle of Man. You are Manx. And yes, we have famous cats that don't have tails. So a little bit unique there. And we're famous for a few other things. Lockton sheep for one. And I guess another one is, just the beauty of having such a small island, a very unique island located so close to England and Ireland, but the way of life there is very, very different pace, that's for sure. So I'm originally from the Isle of Man, and I've moved to China almost 15 years ago to this day. So we're coming closer and closer to, I've always almost been in China for 15 years. And the 15 years I've spent away from my home have been a very unique experience. And some of it has been good, some of it's been not good, some of it's been very challenging, and a lot of it has also been rewarding, but in many different levels, many different ways. And I've decided to bring this journey, this podcast, to share my experience of having traveled through China to the world. But not just my story. As I've been here for so many years, I've gotten to know many unique individuals who have also just such a unique story that they're willing to share. And this podcast, I hope, allows not only my voice, but the voice of others to share their unique experience with you guys, the viewers of Manx As The Hills podcast. So that is really the main journey that we're focusing on. However, it is also a podcast there to inspire and to motivate others around us directly, not only here in Xi'an, but globally throughout the world. And really just to inspire change, inspire a different way of thinking. There are so many people that believe that they understand people's situations because they've heard it or seen it from a bird's eye point of view or a third person's point of view, but they've never actually sat down to talk to somebody who has lived the life as I have, or others who have lived an expat life for so many years, and to really dive deep into that conversation. And that is what Manx As The Hills podcast is trying to achieve, is to give a voice to those who have a story to share, and to share it with the world, and to listen as to how being an expat or a traveller, somebody who's decided to uproot themselves from where they've felt comfortable, which in most situations is their hometown, and to change their lives in a completely different way than what many people do. There are so many expats in the world, and I have a lot of respect to a lot of them. Yes, some leave their homes for bad reasons, but I do believe a lot of people do try to leave home for the good reasons. And it's those people who do leave for the good reasons that you see such a unique experience, and you see that person grow in such a unique way that if they had stayed where they were, if they had stayed in that comfort zone of, for myself, if I had stayed in the Isle of Man, sure, my life might have been comfortable, but I would not have the experience, the life experience, the knowledge, and the friends that I've met if I did. And it's that which is why I've started this podcast. So, the Manx As The Hills, the name of the title, I hope it's self-explanatory, but let me dive a little deeper into that title. Manx because I'm originally from the Isle of Man, and I wanted to use something that kind of grounds me as to where I've come from originally. And Manx As The Hills basically is a saying that we say back at home in the Isle of Man, is that you're Manx as the Hills because that's where you're from, and you know the Isle of Man so well, you're born and bred there, you're part of the culture, that you're a part of the island, you're Manx as the Hills. And it's something that we say when we know somebody is truly local, somebody who has been raised up in the Isle of Man. And I wanted to use that saying because I felt it's unique, but it grounded the focus of this podcast journey, which is talking about people who have left their hometown and to explore something that is very alien and very scary. I mean, nobody decides just to leave home to, do something out of the back of their mind. If you're going to do it right, you plan it. And some cases, that plan might be for a very short term and it turns into a longer period of time. But you don't just say, right, that's it, I'm going to leave my friends, my family, my island, the place I know, the place I love, the place I've grew up in, just to go and do something and I've no idea what I'm going to do. Now, I'm not saying that that's for everybody. Yes, there are some people I've met that have literally just packed a bag and the next night jumped on a train or a plane and explored. And, those people, congratulations. I mean, well done to you. I was in a similar situation, which we're going to explore in a future podcast. However, I want to bring this journey to the world of how not only myself, my family, my friends, colleagues, and acquaintances that I've met during my time in China have experienced their life traveling abroad, living in China, living in other countries, and to share that with everybody. So I hope as you join us on this journey that you guys can experience what we've experienced, though not directly, but you can have a sense of what people go through living and traveling abroad. It's very easy to get caught up in media, news, videos online that make it look glamorous. And yeah, sure, there are a lot of times where it is very glamorous lifestyle, glamorous places that we get to stay or visit, things that you'd be like, wow, I if I'd stayed home, I'd never have seen something as amazing as this. Absolutely. But there have also been difficult times. There's been challenges, there have been tough times, things to do with friends, family, relatives, and it's those things as well that I hope to share with everybody. Because sometimes I think we forget is that, everybody has done it. I've done it, people have done it, friends and family have done it, and we post online what is good, what looks good. And for the most part of my 15 years in China, I have to say I've been very, very blessed, and still to this day love and cherish China very, very much. And sure, many people might disagree with that. However, they've had a very different experience than I have, and this is why I want to share my experience. Sure, many people might disagree with a few things, and that's okay, and this is what this podcast is about, is to bring these things open and to share. But I hope everybody comes with an open mind, that everybody has a unique lifestyle, a different way of dealing with situations, and yeah, challenging times. show the true character of somebody. So guys, this is kind of a short introduction podcast as to why we've started this podcast. And I use the term we because this podcast journey isn't directly focused on me. Sure, I'm going to be the host, the provider, the producer, the editor, the person who's going to be leading this podcast, because this is something that I truly believe I wanted to share, not only with the people back home who, my family who are directly connected to my life, but also my friends who, still ask a few questions now and again. How are things going in China? How's life going? Kriss, it looks amazing. But sometimes I don't always show what's really going on. We show the good things, and absolutely I've had many and still do, but also to open people's eyes as to it's not always that easy to be away from family, to be away from friends, to be away from people who will truly understand how you feel at certain times. So though I'm very blessed to be with my family, and for those that are joining this introduction podcast for the first time, yes, I am married. I've been married for I believe it's 13 years. I think we're coming up to 14 years, but don't quote me on that one. But at least 13 years. We were married in January, so we're actually coming close to our next anniversary. Oh, that reminds me. But anyways, and I also have 2 beautiful children, and of course I'm going to be biased, and I hope to bring them onto this podcast journey. I want this to be inclusive with my family. I want you guys online to also see what they go through as a unit, as a family unit, because I believe that if a family is thinking together, working together, planning together, no matter what comes around the corner, and especially living as an expat, living in a foreign country that, though for the most part I enjoy, I love, there are still things that daily surprise me. How people think, how things work over here. And that's for somebody who has worked and lived here for 15 years. There are still things that come out of the corner, unexpected, and you're like, wow, I've not experienced that before. And I believe that's the same for any expat in any culture. Unless you're born and raised in a specific area, there are still going to be things that shock you. And that's where sometimes you get that culture shock effect again, or you kind of feel that, wow, I've not felt that kind of experience since I first arrived here. And yeah, it still continues to happen. But through the years, I feel that you're better prepared to deal with it than you were when you first arrived. Now, unless you're somebody who just completely disagrees, or somebody who is unwilling to be open-minded, and to think globally as to how things are done, how people think in certain situations, and to adapt, yeah, living abroad can be difficult. Absolutely. So guys, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's joining me and my guests who will be joining on this podcast journey. I just want to say welcome, and a big thank you to everybody who's decided to join us on this journey. From this week, guys, we will be launching our first major podcast, and it will be fun, exciting. It was actually this time 3 years ago we tried to launch a similar podcast journey. However, due to COVID and the situation based here in China, it didn't really take off. We didn't have the time to really focus on it. After all, guys, we've got jobs. This is something that we're doing just out of the spare time that we have available. And I hope that each week we can bring something new and exciting for you guys to sit back and just listen as to how others have experienced living and traveling abroad. And this is open for everybody. But one thing that I hope is this message also reaches parents. And as a parent myself, a father of 2, I'm also, challenging my children, but preparing them for them to also have a similar life to what I've had. I don't expect them to stay put. I don't expect them to, sit still or to, stay where they are. I do expect them to travel, to explore this beautiful earth that we have, and to experience their own lives. And to do that, we have to prepare our children. And if you're a parent watching this with children, I encourage you to, join us on this journey so that you can have a better understanding as to how you can prepare your children for a similar journey. Now, unless you want your children, stay home, I want them to go to, local school, local university, local college, they're going to stay here, then sure. And if that's what your child also wants, then that's great. But also, I feel, as a parent, somebody who has left a small country such as the Isle of Man, moved all the way to one of the biggest countries in the world, China, I feel that the experience I've had has been amazing. Overall, out of all the challenges, it has been a very amazing experience where I've learned and adapted and, grown into somebody that appreciates things in life a lot more than if I had stayed somewhere and not experienced what I have. So I hope, as a father and speaking to other parents out there who may be listening to this podcast, I hope that maybe this gives you, as we go through our coming podcast with our guests and visitors, gives you an insight as to how others have prepared their children, how they've been able to uproot themselves with their family to move to a completely foreign land. I mean, that is amazing. For you to be in a country such as England, the Isle of Man, America, wherever it may be, and you've got children and you decide to say, guys, we're leaving, we're going to take our family to another country. I mean, that in itself is wow. It's very, very challenging, and there are many challenges ahead. Your children are going to go through things that you would never even imagine. It doesn't matter how many books, how many people you talk to, and including this podcast. It doesn't matter how much you read, your experience will be completely different than everybody else. That's the way it will be. Everybody thinks differently, reacts differently. Everybody will be different. But I hope through this podcast journey that we can give you a wider scope, a more down-to-earth approach, and dive deep into deep questions that you guys have the opportunity to ask us, so that we can bring these to the podcast and share our experiences, motivate you guys as well, and just be positive about any kind of situation that involves traveling and living abroad. So guys, I want to again say a big thank you to everybody who's joining me and my guests on this podcast journey. And thank you all for watching. If you stay to the end of this introduction podcast, I appreciate all the support, guys. I wish everybody well, and I hope everybody is healthy, safe. Look after yourselves, guys. And I look forward to sharing our live podcasts coming soon on Manx As The Hills podcast. Take care.